Families in the United States have adopted more than 100,000 children from South Korea since 1953. As one of those adopted children, Joel Peterson shares his unique perspective in his book, Dreams of My Mothers. We visited with Joel to find out about the cultures of these two very different countries and the mothers they provided. These women, each in their own way, had a profound influence on Joel's life and his ultimate quest for self-identity.
Most of us, or maybe many of us, never feel that we ever get to know our mothers as people because we knew them as this institution called mom. And so I thought if I wrote a book about two women who were mothers, but also were portrayed as real people who had a journey and they were linked through a unique thing that is known as international adoption, which is a very rare thing, but contained within it is every human passion, drive, hope, dream, love that touches all of us in all parts of our lives. I'm Joel Peterson, and I'm an author. I wrote Dreams of My Mothers, which is categorized as biographical fiction. The book deals with themes where, based on events in my life. I was born to a third world prostitute, impregnated by an American GI. She had a third grade education. She lived in the margins of society. If you want to sort of think of what her life was like, think of, and not to pick on any one place or any one time, but think of, say, America 1926, Selma, Alabama, and a poor, uneducated, single white woman with a half-black child. How would she have been treated? How would he have been treated? And that was the basis and the start of my life, and so those are things that you can't and you shouldn't sugarcoat. And I also shared that, it's traumatic. Think of if you are 6 years old and your mother tells you, I'm sending you away. I'm not going to be your mother anymore. You're going to have a new family. And you're like, what the heck does that mean? How does that work? And not here, but you're going to be sent somewhere far away to people who don't look like you, don't speak your language, and you can kind of think of what that might have been. You cannot understand maybe the joys and the triumphs of life unless you are willing to go ahead and starkly see the anti-joys and the anti-triumphs of life. America is changing, the face of America is changing. We are still struggling with who is American, what does America look like? And that's partly what I wrote my book about, is to put front and center some of those kind of issues and dialogue. Of the, somewhere, nobody knows for certain, 150 to 200,000 Korean children that have been adopted out of Korea, the vast majority were sent to the United States. Every child deserves to have a home, to have parents, to have every opportunity to be loved and cherished. So adoption and international adoption, and often what they call transracial adoption, where you have parents of one race adopting children from another race, is quite polarizing. A lot of strong feelings on many sides of that, and I understand and completely validate those feelings. But what we know is this: adoption is still one of the most successful human social interventions ever invented. The Minnesota that I grew up in does still exist in many, many ways. I go back to my hometown of St. Peter, Minnesota, and it is remarkably the same. I think it's added maybe one or two more traffic lights, so maybe there's 4 total in the town. People still know each other. People still assume the best of each other, and I think Minnesota in general is like that. I was very fortunate that my mother and the character of Ellen Lindquist that I write about in the book, Dreams of My Mothers, passed on lessons saying, the key thing is that we all judge ourselves by our intentions, but others can only judge you by your actions. So we may have intended we may be very grateful. We intended to send that thank you note, but if you didn't send that thank you note, other people just think you're an ingrate. And the character of Ellen, modeled after my mother, passed on this lesson not so much in her words, but in her actions. She did these things. She lived her life a certain way. And that, I believe, is the thing that we can do as parents. Our children pay attention to us all the time. And so they look at our actions. We may talk to them a fraction of our lives, but they will know our actions. So it's really about living the example that you want them to live in their own life. I remember giving my dad for a Father's Day gift one time, I think I was 12, a coffee cup. And it said on it, you can always tell a sweet, but you can't tell them much. And, you know, and there's a certain reputation among Scandinavians, among people who know Scandinavians, that Scandinavians are pretty stubborn, or maybe that it's hard to dissuade them once they have set themselves to a certain thing. You know, Scandinavians are known for a certain stoicism, but what again came through was that it wasn't so much in the words that I think the Scandinavian tradition is all about. The Scandinavian culture somewhat distrusts words. They look at actions. Ironically, I decided to put it into words in a book to try to capture that. So it's very gratifying to know that people are so vested that they care about these characters that I have helped bring to life in a book. The fact that those characters were based on real people, I'm not sure that people really care about the real people per se. Real people are very complex, and we don't have simple little beginning, ends, and wrapped up nice bow tie lives. We continue on until our lives don't. But those characters that are introduced in that book can go on and may have additional stories, which I hope maybe I can share with the readers in the future.